Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Stories That Inspire Us podcast. And just to let everyone know, I am also broadcasting live through the Wisdom Audio app. I am so excited to be here today with my amazing guest. You know, you hear the word boot camp and you think, oh my God, what is happening? And I have to tell you before I introduce this couple, their story inspired me so much. I had to have them on as soon as I could. Without further ado, I want to welcome to the Stories podcast, Christi and Rick Diamond. Welcome. I'm so excited to have both of you here with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. We're excited to do this.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting for me. And I know that Marriage Boot Camp, that's also been seen on WETV. And the premise behind everything that you do, and as you can see, I'm very animated because I'm excited to really chat about this and dive into the story. You both collectively together heal and repair marriages.
Correct.
That's correct.
I want to hear your story before all of this happened, so we can kind of give a backdrop to our viewers and listeners.
Absolutely. So we are both on our second marriages, and we've been together 10 years this year. I was a single mom for 8.5 years to 3 boys, mom and dad 24/7 on my own. And Rick came in with a 5-year-old precious little girl. And when we met, we actually met a year previous to us actually dating and getting together. I'll tell you one thing I noticed about Rick. We were actually at a church dance of all places. Yes, it's that cheesy. But we met at a church dance, and of all the guys I danced with that night, I saw kindness in his blue eyes, and he was the only one that asked me about myself and didn't talk about himself the whole time. So I was really drawn to him, but then I found out he lived an hour and a half away. So I was like, yeah, see you, bye. Good luck, you know. Anyway, we ended up dating a year later and had an instant connection to where our first date together ended up being 8 hours long. Like, we just had instant connection with each other, and it was amazing. We chose to get married, and I thought I was in this really healed place. I mean, I was doing speaking engagements, all this stuff. I was awesome on my own, and we got married, and all the baggage came up, and it was like, oh my gosh. And so 2 years into our marriage, we were actually at the point of divorce. And what we realized, actually what we didn't realize at the time, was that we were re-triggering each other into our trauma without even knowing it. And as we were doing that, we were sending ourselves back into this place of the, I don't belong, the not enoughness, and just got so discouraged that we were on the verge of divorce. And it was pretty hard because, you know, I'd already been through divorce, and that is the last thing I wanted to say to my boys. Hey, we're going to have to go through this really rocky, hard ride again. And we sat them down to do that. And Rick was to move out a few weeks later. I left to go to California for a speaking engagement. And we were so tight Rick was so tight in his, like, this is the answer. You want to share a little bit about where you were at that point?
Well, I was thinking more logically, thinking that I couldn't make her happy, and that she'd probably find happiness with somebody else. And that it was a better idea to divorce than it was to try to figure it out. And I also was at that place where I didn't feel like there was really anything wrong with me. And so I didn't need to change in any way.
Yeah, we were kind of stuck, and it was it was also this, it was this battle of we loved each other so deeply, like deeply loved each other. But it was just like, we can't figure this out. Like, I'm so done with the arguing and the fighting and the conflict and the not figuring out how to put the pieces together. Anyway, I ended up actually being held at gunpoint. And in LA, in actually a very, very ritzy neighborhood, two LA gang members came and, you know, we were in the car anyway. And that was a really pivotal moment. It was like, okay, I could have nearly died here. I could have died. And it was actually that we called it divine intervention that brought us back together to the realization of, wow, if we split up, what would we be losing? And we knew we'd be losing a lot.
Well, and not just would I be losing her, you know, in divorce, but I was actually woken up because I almost lost her to death. And that was pretty traumatic for me, knowing that I could have lost her to that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even fathom what that must have been at that point of time in your life. No worries here. Everyone knows I am a live podcaster. Don't even give it a second thought. It's okay. But I want to, before we really dive into that part, I just want to back up just a tad. And I love how you were describing how you met. And Christi, you had said, and Rick, obviously you can probably attest to this because you were there. Christi said, of all the guys that I danced with. Well, how many guys was she dancing with that night?
That's a good question. How many were you dancing with?
Now the truth comes out, right? Oh my gosh. And you know, Christi, you had also mentioned too that, you know, there was obviously a connection there when you met at that dance, cheesy as you think it may have been. But I do want to point out that, okay, an hour distance, I get it. Then you finally have this date. You're together for 8 hours. Did you decide in that 8 hours that you were both going to get married? Because that's what it sounded like to me. Or
I think he did.
Well, we discovered that she had never kissed anybody quite like me that first date.
Oh my gosh, you are a kissing boy.
and everybody on Wisdom, you should see how both of them are laughing and they are both lighting up. And Christi, I might add, is blushing just a tad.
Just a tad. Well, I actually don't kiss on the first date.
We broke it into 2 dates because it was so long. So the first 4 hours there was no kissing.
That's how I could justify kissing on the first date, because like we aren't. I'm not a kiss on the first date kind of person, but we had made this funny little bet. So Rick comes to the date with, we're at this kind of like, you know, this bowling alley, and he brings his bowling shoes and his balls,
I need to show something off that I was good at. So I decided we were going to go bowling.
He's like the coolest kid. Well, it was
It's
just
a first date.
kind of
So,
this
you know,
bowling alley. That was what it was.
it was
like
actually more of like a kid's place. So it wasn't a full out bowling alley. So it was, it wasn't as.
So he said, hey, let's make a bet. If I get a strike, then I get a hug.
Just a hug.
And honestly, I was like, okay, that's a little forward for a first date. Anyway. And then he said, what do you want? And I said, well, I guess I'll take a hug too. And I was horrible. I'm still horrible at bowling. I had to have the bumper.
Oh,
Pads
yeah,
up
one
or
of those two.
Yeah. There's my little vulnerability. And anyway, so he had gotten a few strikes, and so he'd gotten a few hugs.
Just a few.
And just a
There
few.
were a lot more than a few.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember it that way. But okay.
Hmm.
So then I was doing so poorly that I said to him, at this point, I should have bet that I'd give you a kiss for every strike because I'm doing so bad. And he said, oh, I'll take it. And literally the next time I bowled, I got a strike. Right. So then he jumps up and he's like, yeah, doing this little
I mean,
doing, but being the gentleman that he is, he said, hey, you don't have to pay up, and I said, oh no, I don't make a bet I don't pay up on. so,
so
we-
she didn't kiss me at that moment.
no,
So-
not then, but later on it was this
Well,
little, go ahead.
I guess we'll go to the long version of this whole thing, right? So, a couple hours later, it was actually raining, and we're in the Dallas, Texas area. And we found this little table under this awning, and I had this little app on my phone that was a fireplace. And so it was as if we were sitting there in front of a fire, and she had told me about a song that she thought was really sexy. So I was playing the song at the same time, just kind of really making the atmosphere, really romantic and everything for her. And that's
Well,
when,
and I'll tell you, ladies, what got me, I mean, I think this will get you too, is that we had some phone conversations, and he loves music. And so he's like, what are some favorite songs? And at the time, the movie Country Strong had come out, and there was this song on there called Give In to Me that I was like, oh, that's kind of a sexy song. So he brings it out a couple of weeks later on our date, and I was like, oh my gosh, he was listening. He remembered, like that was huge.
and
So
she gave in to me and gave me a kiss. So
I was just paying up on a bet.
sure. So
So
Wow.
yeah, it ended. He's a great kisser. I'll just admit that right now. But
the whole world knows now.
The whole world knows now. Absolutely. And this is on, of course, the Stories podcast is also on iHeartRadio and Amazon Music. So you guys are like totally busted.
wow, we are totally busted. Now our kids are gonna know we kiss on our first date. Dang it.
Well, just don't tell our daughter. She doesn't. So.
Oh,
Wow. So now you get married, as you said, and just 2 years later. And by the way, I am also on my second marriage. I've been married for 10 years. No, I'm sorry. I'm married for 7 years. 7 years. We've known each other for 10 years. And now you're at that 2-year mark where life is happening, maybe in ways that you didn't expect. And it sounds like both of you, as we often do sometimes in marriages, fall back on those different emotions that happen. And maybe it wasn't something as simple as, well, he did this or she did this, but just those sparks of maybe the emotional part or the baggage left over from the first marriage. So
well, I'll take
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll take this is that, in hindsight, realizing what it truly was is I had been in a very abusive marriage. My first marriage was my high school sweetheart. There was a lot of physical, mental, emotional abuse. And I remember my friend who's a counselor saying to me, you will not sort through some of these things until you're in relationship again in marriage. And so we get married, and men weren't really safe for me, even though, I had 3 boys I was raising. Men weren't really safe. And what I realized is I didn't know how to be fully seen and therefore fully loved. And so I was turning away the very thing I wanted because of the patterns of the past, because of some of my trauma. He had unresolved things within himself.
Well, I wasn't taught how to handle a strong woman, strong women who are motivated and want to grow. That was never really, shown to me how to be a husband in that situation.
Yeah. And actually when we got married, I was such and this is, tends to be the kind of women I work with in the coaching that I do, is that, they are powerhouses, like powerful women, make things happen, get stuff done. We become our own island that it's like, I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. Well, that is actually trauma-based when we are literally in the place of, I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. And that's where I was. And he was like, why did you marry me? Like, where do I fit into this? Because I was so efficient and knew, And so I had to let go of control. I was very controlling. I had to let go of being in charge of everything. And I had to let go of being so strongly in the masculine energy that he couldn't nurture the feminine energy in me. And it was just like this whole dynamic of this conflict back and forth, not realizing that we were really fighting for connection, but we were in our survival patterns that were creating the disconnection. And so the key was like, how do we get back to connection and feel safe to do so? And very often, when you're in self-preservation mode, you cannot reach connection because you have to have safety in order to be there. And so if we're not feeling safe and we're self-preservation, we're going to keep going back to the triggers and the trauma. And, it's just like, and then you have connection, and then connection doesn't feel safe. So then you go back to self-preservation. It's just a cycle over and over and over again. And so when we could look at those patterns and start to heal them and realize, he was my unfinished business and I was his unfinished business, we started to grow in a space where he became a healing agent in my life. And I want to be very distinct that it wasn't up to him to heal me, but he became a healing agent. And I became that for him. And when we could figure that out together and navigate what it took, it got us to a whole different level of relationship, of connection, and of marriage.
Wow. That is so powerful. He became my healing agent. You became each other's healing agent, but it wasn't each of yours jobs to heal the other. That is very profound.
Yes. Yes. Because many times we think, oh, it's up to you to heal me. It's up to you to fix me. It's up to you to, and he can facilitate healing through how he acts, but it's not his responsibility to heal me. And so I had to look within myself and see what I wanted to grow in and where I could reconnect with myself so that I could feel the connection with him.
And I had to learn how to show up, and what was the best way for her, because everyone's different, right? And so when you're in relationship, it's not your responsibility to be that healer for them, but it is your responsibility on how you show up in that relationship. And sometimes the way, especially us men, show up, it's just not the right way. It's not what our mates need. It's actually it can be abusive. And what I learned is that a lot of men don't know how to really hear or see their spouses. And I had to learn that, to really see her, to really hear her, and so that she felt emotionally safe in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Just unbelievably powerful. And I just want to take a moment to welcome all of our amazing listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. I want to go back a tad to where you both had decided, okay, we're going to get a divorce. This is it. You're in LA, and this traumatic experience happened for you, Christi, which obviously, as you mentioned, a divine intervention. You start healing your relationship from there. And then there's the marriage boot camp. I know that's kind of a lot all at once, but there's a purpose for me going back just a tad. As I've often said, there's always a story behind the story. And both of you in that moment of time thought that your story's okay. Here we are, we're separating, that's it. But it brought you back together, as traumatic as its experience was. And if you want to, but when Rick found out about this experience, this traumatic event that you went through, did you meet at your house? Like, what was the next part of that relationship where you met and say, hey, we need to sit down and figure this shit out?
Yeah, so I had to fly back from LA. We were living in Dallas. And so I flew back and he met me at my friend's house. She had been the one that had arranged, the speaking engagement and stuff. And I got out of the car and first of all, I just lost it emotionally. Like it was just like back to my people, my safety, like everything was just, my purse was stolen, everything, my driver's license to even get on the plane. So I was in trauma for sure. And we get back and kind of a funny story is we ended up going to Sam's to get some stuff and we hadn't really figured out, I didn't have my phone got stolen. So we hadn't even really had a conversation. Like everything was just like, and we're walking in Sam's and he stops me in the aisle of Sam's and says, I can't do it. I can't live without you. Like I can't, I just can't live without you. And he got choked up. And I got choked up and we're crying in the middle of the aisle in Sam's. And he's just like, I am so sorry. I can't even imagine my life without you. And to think that you could have died just kills me.
It sounds like a Hollywood
And
script.
so-
It does. It does.
It was. We just both broke down in Sam's and
I couldn't let go of it. I was holding on to it the whole time.
it was holding on to me pretty tight. And we just kind of wept. And it was just like all the walls that had built up kind of came crashing down. And we got back to the house and I'll just say this, we had the greatest sex ever.
Awesome. That's okay.
Talk
to
about sex in our
I will have to put that disclaimer on the show notes, just saying, people.
sorry, we talk about that with our couples. I mean, it's definitely a part of marriage, right?
It's no longer a
And
G-rated
so,
podcast.
so and then it was like, where do we go from here, right? And so there had to be absolutely some forgiveness on both our ends. And I'll tell you, it was not perfect right after that. Like we went through
Just a little bit of time.
a lot of shiz. I'm keeping it PG.
Yes.
A lot of stuff to get to the place to finally
Well, we went to counselors.
we went to
And-
counselors
and
that didn't work.
That didn't really
It
work
was-
because I felt like they were always on her side. It was the one counselor and it was us two, and it's like it was always my fault in those sessions, and at least that's the way I felt, even
and
though it
remember,
probably
nothing was
wasn't.
wrong with him. So
Right there, so there was nothing wrong with me. So it always felt one-sided, like I was the one that had to do all the changing and everything, and so counseling didn't really work for us. And so we got to a point again where we came to a crossroad, like something has to change, or
well, and and this was funny. So going to marriage boot camp, we'd gotten to the place where we knew we wanted to stay together. At the same point, I was so frustrated because I knew that I was made for more. Like I knew that I wasn't made to do ordinary things. Like I have a really strong connection with God and felt really powerfully that I was to be out there helping women heal from trauma and things like that. And he was, he had grown up kind of in this mentality of, he was in corporate America doing his thing. And that was like the ceiling for him. He was just like, this is all, this is what life's about. And I was like,
I go to work, I come
yeah.
home
And I was
bills.
like, no, there is more. And I felt really tethered to me wanting to fly and expand and write books and do the things that I wanted to do. And so I went to bed one night really, really angry. Like I was so angry. I remember him sleeping and I'm just looking at him and I'm just like, just like, what's, and I literally said a prayer and I was like, all right, God, seriously, I need a solution and I need it quick. Like, I don't want years of counseling. I don't, and I got up at 3 a.m. I went to the computer. Literally, marriage boot camp was the first thing I found. I So I found it. I said, okay, that's it. I couldn't believe it was in Dallas. I was like, what? Seriously? Like, it was like angels were singing. And so I was just like, all right, this is it. So the next morning he gets up, he's he's working his job. And I said, I'm going to marriage boot camp. These are the dates. You can come with me or not, but this is my plan of action. And he was pissed.
I was mad because we're about to spend money on something when counseling didn't work. So what made her think that this was going to work?
Yeah. And so I was just like, and he's like, I have to take time off work and we're going to spend this money. And I was so firm in my resolve of what my direction was that it was just like, this is it. It's this, or I don't know. Maybe we are done again. I don't know. And so he went kicking and screaming. Literally. I remember driving there. Remember the fight? You were just like, I can't believe you're,
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, so we get there. And on the first day they ask, who doesn't want to be here? And his arm, shoots up. He's like, me, I was dragged here. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? He was so mad at me. And I think part of it was the feeling like, you're not going to fix me. There's nothing wrong with me. Right. Like, why are you saying, and we just had this conflict going on. And I wanted something that was going to, I wanted to dig in. I'm a deep diver. I am by nature. I'm just a deep diver. I'm not a surface person. I don't stay surfacey. And it was just like, let's get to the root of what's going on within us. And 4 days later,
that was 4 of the most intense days that we needed. And Jim and Elizabeth Carroll, who created it, put this together that was literally life-changing for me.
Absolutely transformational, life-changing.
And gave me actually a new view on how I was actually triggering her, and how I was not showing up right in our relationship. And it really put us on a new path.
It absolutely did. I mean, 4 days later, he's like singing their praises, just like, I'm telling the world. And we chose to be in association with them, and eventually just over time working alongside them for quite a while. We ended up on stage
as directors
at Marriage Boot Camp, because of our love for it and our dedication to how much we truly feel that when you heal the family, you heal the world. And when you get to that level of connection, it was just like, oh my gosh, like the whole world needs to know this. And we are just so dedicated to creating marriages the way we've created ours that we then, started doing our work as a couple, coaching couples together, both perspectives, kind of thing. And
that's what we bring different than a therapist does, right? So you have the therapist who has that one view, where when you get both the man and the woman in the room with you, because we have to call it coaching and not therapy, right? Even though Christi has her degrees and everything. But we actually are able to bring both perspectives and see both sides, because we've been through that mess. And that mess has literally become our message.
Your mess has become your message. The message. And I think there's such authenticity and validity in that, because couples can relate to that versus, as you mentioned, Rick, the one-sided effect of having a counselor. And if there are any counselors listening or that may listen to, we are not by any means bashing counselors. We're looking at it from a totally different perspective, where each partner going into it feels safe and connected, not only hopefully with each other, but with whom is coaching them through the process.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And counselors do a great job in their talk therapy, and and bringing peace and everything. And so we, it's just for some people, it doesn't work to its fullest.
Wow. So you get connected with this couple that's running the boot camp. Is the boot camp that you're doing now, is it through where you both went, or is this yours and Christy's boot camp?
No, so Jim and Elizabeth Carroll created Marriage Boot Camp, and that is the show.
Yeah, they start on the first 7 seasons of the show.
Okay.
Marriage Boot Camp on WETV, and then brought it into seminar form in Dallas. And still continue to run it. And we are directors alongside them, facilitating the 4-day intensive with them with Marriage Boot Camp.
Wow. What is something that each of you have learned with going through this process of meeting with different couples? For instance, maybe you're in session with them and you get home and, is there a conversation? Well, they went through this, maybe we can apply that to what we're working on.
So we go to the 4-day intensive, which we think is literally groundbreaking. And it's just like kind of shaking up all the beliefs and all the patterns. And there's so much healing that takes place that you're now ready to kind of create a new relationship, because the old relationship's not working, right? Like some of those patterns have to die. And some people come who are strong and they just want to tune up, but then there's a deeper awareness of unresolved issues. And, so going through and watching this over and over and over for us is like, honestly, like, this is my life's work, is this level of healing and what it does. What we find, and this is where we've created our own practice, and we call it kind of the aftercare, but we also have couples who've never gone through Marriage Boot Camp who come to us, is that one thing that's missing for them in counseling is people are meeting 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month, and you'll get into something and then it's like, okay, it's time to go. And you're just like, and so 2 things that we found. One is that what we find over time, just to give you kind of a broad example that I think a lot of people could just, see, is, say, for instance, one of the spouses has an affair, right? And so they have an affair and it's devastating, and there's betrayal and broken trust that happens. And they decide they want to stay together, right? And so there's kind of this reconciliation, there's this apology, there's this, kind of reckoning with things, but there's, and we call it, there's a container that has all the stuff in it that went along with all the emotions and everything with the affair. And the container's not completely cleaned out. Like there's just, there's like stuff happened in the apologies, but then it becomes almost like, let's not talking about it anymore. Aren't you over it? Kind of thing. And so the container's not empty, right? And when the container's not empty, resentment starts to build, right? So say a few years pass, and then maybe the other spouse that didn't do the cheating, now they've done something, and there's created a financial burden and made a really poor decision in finances. And so there's, just like, okay, I'm sorry, let's figure this out. And then there's another container, and it's not fully, completely cleaned out, right? But it's gotten some of it. And so then resentment builds there. And so what we find over time is that there's containers that have not completely been cleaned out. And so what we have created is what we call the art of repair. And we feel that the healing happens in the actual repair, and that there's a technique and a process to go through to be able to clean out the containers so that there is no resentment. Like the container is completely cleaned out. It's clean, it's done, it's finished. And we go on to the next and the next. And when we can do that, the resentment dissolves and the connection increases, and you're at a deeper level. And, it doesn't even have to be big things like a financial or an affair, but there's just little things that like still dig at us today.
And in those situations, trust has been lost. and trust can only be built back in safety. So is the work that we do, is we help create that safe place so that the trust can build back. And when you have trust, you have connection. You have connection with yourself, you have connection with your spouse. You're actually able to start to actually heal. And that's what we help create. So they can go through the 4-day intensive, right? With the marriage boot camp, but we have added that consistent behavior. And when you have consistent behavior over time, that builds trust.
Well, and let's face it, it took years to get to that place. So it's not going to take 4 days to just resolve it all and you're done, right? So there needs to be some guidance. There needs to be some integration of tools. There needs to be some coming together in the healing. And so what we've done is we created a retreat center called Healing Acres, where we bring the couples here, and for 2.5, 3 days, we're 100%, because that's done in a group environment, right? It's everybody's kind of walking through it in a group environment. It's 100% focused on the couple and their issues and their relationship and their containers and their repair. And we have found that when you're in a place unplugged from the world, from being parents and, owning companies or doing whatever, and you can truly just be present with that. We do some sound therapy, we do other things to, create an environment of safety and trust and the central nervous system regulating itself, that when we can bring that together, I'll tell you, it is such sacred work for us, because to watch I call it watching your beloved walk through their roadblocks. It's like you get glimpses of the little boy in him that was hurt at a certain age and didn't have resolution. And you watch him go back to places to empower himself, and his emotional intelligence grows. You literally see that little boy in him grow up and become the man you've been waiting for all along. But it was this woundedness where he was stuck, and vice versa for the woman. And so when you can walk that sacred ground with your spouse, like, there is such a cohesiveness that happens that just wraps around both of you. And it's just like, ooh, I see you, and it makes sense. And I understand. And now I have so much love and compassion for what you went through that created your wounding, right? And now we've healed that together. Like, I was right there with you, and we've healed that together. And so now we can walk forward in an adult relationship, because really the triggers are taking us back to our childhood, where we haven't emotionally grown up, right? Because that's where our growth was stunted emotionally. And so you actually literally create a new relationship going there.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Healing Acres, 2 to 3 days. When you have couples that gather at the Healing Acres, how many couples do you usually have together in that atmosphere?
Well, what's funny is, so we were doing this a few years ago, and we would house them at an Airbnb, right? Then we moved to Oklahoma and had our own retreat center. And so we would have them come, and they stay on site. They are treated like royalty.
One couple at a time.
So we do one couple at a time. Well, we outgrew that in a year and are now in a larger facility. So now we can even do that environment with 4 couples at a time, or 1 couple. So there's kind of a choice now to do either or. And ideally, doing kind of your individual work together, but also kind of in community, creates a lot of healing, because you're like, oh, we're not alone. Oh, you guys go through that too, like, oh, you guys can, and so now we have the capacity to have 4 couples at once, or 1 couple at a time, on preference. But yeah, we outgrew that and are now in a larger facility, which is really exciting for us.
Wow, congratulations and all of that. And I think the work that both of you have grown together in such a way, not only business-wise, but really as a married couple together, that is just amazing. Where do you see Healing Acres 5 years down the road?
Well, we so we're doing women's retreats, we're doing men's retreats. We hope to we've got 40 acres here, so we have room to expand, maybe create some more space. And we hope, to continue to bring couples here to be able to heal. We're about 40 minutes away from Oklahoma City, so we're still really close to the big city and everything, but we're in a place where people come to be able to relax and heal, and get away from the city or all the hustle that's going on. So we have little projects out there. We want to have little self-sustaining gardens and stuff, but that's for when people come out here, they get to experience just being out in the country at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a visionary, so I got big plans.
Oh, wow. Would you like to share any of them?
Yes, we actually see this being a space. It's for one, I wish everyone could experience marriage the way that we now experience it. Like, it's just, I heard yesterday that 7% of America actually has deeply fulfilling marriages. Like 7% of our population is experiencing this,
Which is sad because already we know that 50% are ending in divorce
or more by
Yeah.
now. But yeah, so that to me is heart-wrenching, because I'm like, children growing up in homes where there's not that healthy, like connected, like we're just going to keep, perpetuating the same kind of problem if we don't come together and figure this out. And the thing is, this is like the yummiest part of life. I mean, to have, I kind of call him my impact partner, to make an impact together as a couple. And he truly is my favorite person in the whole wide world. We have so much fun together. We dream together, we vision together. And so our vision for Healing Acres is to have a place in a community where people come to envision their own dreams, to go into, co-creation together, to have self-sustaining gardens, and being able to be in community with other people. We, have live gatherings here in our local community as well. We have plans to build cabins and yurts and to be able to, we do drum circles here. We do moonlight gatherings at the women's retreats. We do kind of a goddess night event for women to really see the goddess within them and who they are. And so I just feel like this is a sanctuary for people to unplug from the outside world, from all the stresses, to come and really return to themselves, to learn how to belong to themselves again and to belong to each other. And so we have lots of plans. And if we look at the big vision, it feels a little overwhelming. At the same time, we had a 3-year plan and we did that in 9 months. Like, that's the power of two people united in purpose and God in that relationship. And so it just, like, the possibilities are endless. And I think that's one thing that many people don't take the opportunity to invest in, is their most crucial relationship. Because when this is off, so much is off. Like, work is off, our business is off. Like, when this is off, it affects everything. And when this is great, oh my gosh, so much is great. And so people aren't realizing that investing in your marriage and the work in it to make it the greatest asset in your life creates actually more financial freedom. It creates more satisfaction in your work. It creates more satisfaction, fulfillment in your life and your impact. And so it's just odd to me that that's probably, the last thing we go to invest in, right? But the very first thing that actually takes us off kilter. So we have a big vision together, and we've created this together because of the relationship we built. And so our vision is that many couples come here to also experience that for themselves.
Because,
And
you know,
create
all of
together.
us want to heal the world, right? And, you know, and we feel that to heal the world, you have to start with the family.
Mhm.
So,
You are absolutely correct. And oh my gosh, I can't thank you both enough for being here today and sharing your vulnerable stories and your vision for Healing Acres. It sounds like an amazing place. Do you ever have couples that want to get married that want a chance to meet with you?
Yes, we actually, I mean, gosh, if I had had this years ago, you know, how different life would have been. Yes. And couples who come say, oh my gosh, I want my daughter and her fiance to come through, because if they learn this here, like what then is possible for them. So absolutely, that is a huge need and a want for people to be able to work this out before they even, you know, do the marriage and figure out what's going on with them, because like it's invaluable to know how to communicate well and to work through your own things.
we just had a couple that got married a couple weeks ago after working with us. So
Wow.
it's absolutely something.
Oh my gosh, you two are amazing. I love your story. I love the fact that, you know, you both, each of you collectively, but individually have created something so amazing within your own marriage and sharing that with others. I am just blown away. And I hope both of you, oh my gosh, will definitely consider coming back to the Stories That Inspire Us podcast. I
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We have a lot of listeners on the Wisdom app, and before we sign off, I want to thank our listeners for being on. Quite a few. Thank you all so much. Christi, where can people connect with you further and find out more about what you and Rick do?
Yes, absolutely. We have a website. It's called The Healing Coach. So we coach healing, thehealingcoach.com. We actually on there's an opt-in to for 12 unconventional ways to strengthen your marriage. We are very unconventional in some of the things that we do. So there's a little opt-in there for a freebie if you guys want that. But you can go to thehealingcoach.com to reach out to us and get in touch with us.
Wonderful. And of course, I'll make sure all of that information gets in the show notes. This has been an amazing podcast. And again, I want to thank you for your time. Is there any, Christi or Rick, you know, collectively or, you know, each of you individually, is there maybe something that you want to say to perhaps a couple that is listening to this right now that are going through a tough time?
Do you have something? I have something.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say, oh, I'm gonna get emotional because like I actually feel like I'm speaking to somebody right now as I'm saying this. That nothing's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with him. You just haven't learned how to come together in a place where you both feel safe enough to truly, fully be seen. And when you can be fully seen, you will be fully loved. And it's so possible. And I know that, you know, you see other people, oh, those, you know, that couple looks great. Or they, you know, why is that not possible for me? It is so possible. So I just want people to know there's nothing wrong with you. That's the first place we go to. What's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? There is unresolved trauma. That is always what it goes back to. And that's the deepest part of our work, is the unresolved trauma that has you in a place that keeps you cycling in the, you know, in the trauma cycle. And if you can find a way to heal that and hop out of that loop, there is hope, and you can have this kind of love, this kind of relationship, this kind of marriage.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Folks, I want you to reach out to Christi and Rick Diamond from the Healing Acres. And again, I will make sure that all their contact information is in the show notes. This has been so insightful on so many different levels, and take all those words to heart. This is definitely going to be one of those podcasts that I listen to over and over again, because these truly are the stories that inspire us. Today, I was inspired by Christi and Rick. Thank you all so much for being here. Bye for now.
Thank
And
you.
Rick, you're welcome. One more thing. If you have a story to tell, your story matters. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you back again real soon.